Welcome back to episode 41 of the Second Look Sports Podcast. I'm your host today, Justin Arenburg. Joined along with me is Brandon Brown and Alex Mandarino. Alex is back on the show after a week off because of scheduling issues. Like we said last week, it's just going to be a flow of people in and out because who knows with everyone's schedules right now. It is a crazy time in the sports calendar, and it's a fun time in the sports calendar as everything is heating up. The NFL season is getting at the halfway point. It's hard to believe that we're already halfway through the NFL season. The CFL season ended. Congratulations to the Saskatchewan Roughriders for winning the Grey Cup, 112th Grey Cup, I believe. Yeah, and then we have the NHL season, a quarter of the way through the season already. Kind of crazy to think that. The NBA season going on, 15 games into that season, the MLB off season as well, and the PWHL starting up tomorrow. It's all going on. So, boys, I know it's been a crazy week, but how has your week been? Alex, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Grey Cup because I actually got a chance to produce the game for TSN Radio, which was fun. Wasn't as dialed in too much to the whole of the CFL this year. I did get a chance to watch essentially every Toronto Argonauts games. It was fun to watch, but they didn't have the best year. Some great football played on Sunday. Davis Alexander's first loss in the CFL. He went 13-0 as a starter heading into that game, and obviously took the L. His hamstring almost disintegrated, but unfortunately. They weren't able to pull it off, but fun game to watch. No, it's been great. Like, October is generally one of the better sports months, but the way you lay it out there, Justin, November is kind of making a push, especially if you factor in the PWHL season kicking off tomorrow. So maybe it's just more the Toronto Blue Jays idea that, like, the Jays were kind of holding up the MLB season here in Toronto for a long time. So the energy's high, but I think a lot of people in the city are starting to push that out of their memory and actually have other sports to watch to take their brains off it. It's been fun. The week in general, just sports related. It's been a fun ride.
That's good. Brandon, how about you, man? I know you're busy every morning with JD now.
Yeah, of course. For those who don't know, I helped produce the JD Muggs podcast at Sportsnet, and we went from a 1-hour show during the summer. Now we're a 2-hour show covering all the sports. So it's been a bit of a busy couple of weeks as we kind of transition to that. We're also on Sportsnet Plus now, so go check it out there. I mean, just doing that extra stuff has kind of just added more onto my responsibilities there. But it's been a lot of fun and just more experience, and working with you guys too is awesome as well. So every week I love coming on and chatting about all the sports. I mean, Alex, you mentioned Davis Alexander, man. That guy is a dog. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy like a football. Like, I've seen football players who have that, that level of intensity and that just like kind of will to win. But I don't know that I've ever seen in the CFL a guy kind of take so many people's hearts because of that, like, that just intense style of play that he has. And it's obviously been working for him. It's too bad that they, I kind of thought they might somehow pull out a win. But it just wasn't meant to be this year. But he's going to be a fun one to watch. And I'm sure we'll get into everything else going on. It's just a whirlwind of sports action, it feels like, over the last few weeks. And technically we did get the Jays in November, because I think
they
was
played
November 1st. So that was a great way to kick off what's been a crazy month so far in sports in general. So I'm excited to see where we go.
And quickly before we go, off that, Alexander, a dog, but congratulations to Trevor Harris, who captured his first Grey Cup in his 13th CFL season, and he's 39 years old. So he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for a while. Always steady, always accountable, and always available, it feels like. And that's kind of the best thing to have as a professional athlete. But yeah, just overall, solid effort by him and the whole Saskatchewan Roughriders team to get the victory over Montreal, because it was a good game. I do have a quick question. If anyone caught the halftime show of MGK and what you guys thought about that quickly.
Yeah, I did actually, and we played it on the radio, so like I got the full experience to watch and listen to it. I thought it was great. Like, I didn't really have any expectations going in. I have there's a couple songs by him I like, like I'll give him credit, but he's not really my musical taste and style per se. But I'm like, the way it ended, I was like, this is solid. Like, just musically, the way he like got the crowd going, I'm like, damn, okay, like I didn't
Yeah.
anticipate that. I don't know if I would have like a rating if I did maybe like 7.5, 8 out of 10 for me, but it was kind of weird they picked him. He's from like Houston, and to have him go all the way to Winnipeg just kind of felt weird, but he performed. It worked out, I think.
Yeah, that's one of their bigger guests, I would say. Like, who's actually like usually their guests are it's hard, it's mean to say, but like they're past their
Sure.
prime of their
Definitely.
performing careers. And
Green Day.
MGK, I don't think it. What? Sorry.
The Green Day one, I think,
Oh
sticks
yeah,
out
like
to me, like, they
you know
were
what I mean.
definitely
Like
a bit past, their prime for
they're
sure.
past their primes. They're just like on the back end tour, and they're like, yeah, let's just go do the Grey Cup as an afterthought. But like MGK, I thought honestly, like he's not someone that's old, and he's like still making music. So, shout out to the CFL for grabbing someone
Mhm.
that's actually like making music and has a presence in the music industry. I thought it was pretty good. I the only thing that disappointed me was kind of like it was just him, and I know it's hard to like say like you should always expect guests, but like I thought someone would come out with him, and then I thought like he didn't really um watching on TV, like there wasn't like he just was on the little tiny stage, and they didn't really
Yeah.
get him to do much, and just like I don't know, the Super Bowl halftime show, it just drives up the expectation that there's going to be a lot of movement and stuff like that at these kind of halftime shows. So that's kind of what I was expecting, but overall the songs were great, him singing was great, and yes, I thought overall it was pretty good. Brandon, what about
Mhm.
you?
No, I mean, I would agree. I don't have much to say to the contrary. I think, Justin, you made a good point about the songs. Like, MGK is kind of a weird one, right? Because his career is like he's done some rap, he does
Yeah,
rock now. I was kind of concerned about like, yeah, what is he going to come out and sing? Is there going to be weird transitions between these songs? Are we going to kind of have a rap concert and then it's going to turn into a rock con? Like, I wasn't sure, but I love
yeah,
the way that they stayed consistent. I thought he performed very well. Um, you're right, Justin. Like, it's hard when every year we watch the Super Bowl and then we see the Grey Cup, and then you compare the two, and really there is no comparison in terms of the entertainment factor that the Super Bowl is able to do. But the Grey Cup, I'm sure they spend every dollar they can, to make it as good as they can, and that's part of the guests that they reach out to. They do try
Mhm.
to get, I think, people that
mm-hmm.
are in the zeitgeist. People that they're not
Yeah,
going for smaller acts that nobody knows. They really do try to get some face value or some name value, I guess I should say, from guys and girls that they've had perform in the past. So, yeah, good get. I hope they continue to do it, and yeah, we'll see where it leads. Maybe the extra little bit of juice. I thought I saw maybe more people than usual. I think, especially talking about the halftime, and
yeah.
people will chat about the game, but maybe not necessarily about the performances or the entertainment, when it comes to the Grey Cup. So it was good to see that people, for the most part, had positive things to say, and like I said, maybe they'll try to build on that going into next year.
Yeah. I thought it was honestly bigger than I don't know what the numbers were for TV and stuff like that, but it felt bigger. It felt like there was more of a production value from TSN this year. They had a couple actual panels there as well. Not just the one panel and then like a couple sideline reporters. They had like two panels there. It was kind of cool to see.
It was cool
And
that
they did.
they sent, and knows this firsthand. It's cool that they sent like the Overdrive guys and were
Yeah,
in the
that's
Mhm.
what I
shows
mean. Like
there.
that.
Like,
Mhm.
that was cool. Like, it was, they really embraced, like you said, the
The
whole side of
whole
it.
thing
Yeah.
of that being their event of the year, and that's
Yeah.
really cool. But moving on, from one stage to another, we have the Winnipeg Jets announcing the Adam Lowry extension at their gala last night, or it was some kind of gala that they were hosting
Something like
last
that.
night, where they announced it while they were answering questions on stage. And Adam Lowry is signed to a 5-year extension worth $5 million per season. Um, Listen, a lot of people have been exchanging in Discord over the past 24 hours on this one, whether or not it's a good signing or not. They value the captaincy and what he brings to the room, but then he's 33 years old and he's going to be making $5 million until he's 38. And then he's also going to be like he's a third line center. It's not like he's a top six guy. The cap's going up. So is it a $3.5 million deal in reflection to what the cap is now? Do you like that number? Alex, I'll go to you first. When you see the number of $5 million per season, what do you think about that for Adam Lowry?
Yeah, I think it's a good. First of all, the transition from topics there was good because we went from Winnipeg to Winnipeg. So I don't know if you timed that successfully or that was just the way the rundown planned out. But
No, no, that was
here we go.
just
It's
the way
just
she worked out.
just it's natural.
Yeah,
Uh,
just that good,
yeah,
man.
I think I looked at the age first when I looked at the contract, and I was like, well, you don't want to jump to conclusions because yes, like you add up all of the years and he's 38, and that always kind of when you see anybody sign a contract in the NHL nowadays from I mean anywhere from 31 to 34, like in that range you're thinking, well, hopefully it's short term from a team perspective. In this case it was 5 years. I think when you're looking at it this way, it's hard to compare this contract with a lot of other ones we've seen based on the
Mhm.
age and what value Lowry brings. Because I think at this point in career, it feels a little bit more like an intangible that he brings, like the captain of the locker room. The 30, 40 points a year at this point. You're like you said, third line center, but I just think in the locker room, and I feel like amongst the guys, he really wanted to be there, is my understanding. And I
Yeah,
think the team has already signed their big dogs, right? You brought
yeah.
Connor back. You have Hellebuck and Shifley for a long time. You, especially when it comes to trying to attract guys to stay in Winnipeg, they've done their due diligence, has
Mhm.
the team and Shovel Day off to bring in the big dogs. But I think even like bringing like the life of the team for the next 5 years, if you're trying to attract more players, like Winnipeg is a not really a destination city, but it's a city that the team has aspirations of a Stanley Cup. They've been pretty much successful, at least in the regular season over the last few years. It's probably a great reason why you bring a guy back like this who's a heart and soul guy who wants to be there. It's another chip to say like we have a culture here. So if you're going to
Yeah.
attract free agents, it could be a big thing. And I look at it like the cap going up is like you said, is that 5 million plus? Is that really that big of a deal? Uh, I don't think so. So I wasn't mad about it. I didn't mind that deal for them.
Like you mentioned though, like he even took a back seat and he realized like, hey, let's get Kyle Connor done first. I
Yeah,
will wait until you guys get him done and then we can focus on me because obviously he's the big ticket name and we got to figure out how much he's going to get before we can figure out my contract. And I thought that's, what any captain would normally do. But Adam Lowry, you talked about the free agent thing and keeping that team together. This team is just overall close in my
hmm,
opinion. Like they are super close team. They have been. You saw it when Shifley's dad passed away last
right.
postseason, and the whole team surrounded him and like supported him, and everyone got behind him. This team is just super close, and that like there's a difference between a team and just a bunch of players that you put together, and this is a legit team, in my opinion. Brandon, what about you? What do you think about the Adam Lowry extension?
No, I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think my first reaction was, yeah, how long is this contract? 5 years seemed like maybe a touch longer than I would have expected, something maybe in the 3 to 4 year range. But they're
Hmm.
clearly just taking care of their guy. And I'm sure,
Yeah.
like Alex said, whether it's Connor and Hellebuck, it's kind of funny that it works that way.
Yeah.
But Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck, I'm sure, were involved, not necessarily in these negotiations, but they're aware, I'm sure, of the numbers that are out there. They're aware of what it would take, what their guy in Lowry would want, what he will command on the market should he have gotten there. And yeah, I think it's just a good all around, deal for both sides. I think Lowry gets a good bump in terms of I think he was making like 3 and a quarter, I think is kind of
Yeah,
working on right now. So bump up to 5 for everything that he's done for the team and for the, valuable work that he does. I don't think it's really talked about
exactly.
enough how good of a player he really is at the role that he plays. And that's what's helped make Winnipeg such a, dominant, deep team that they've been in the regular season, at least for the last, 3 or 4 years. So I think it's valuable to know that the formula that you have works. And I think that Shovel Day off and then the Jets are just doing themselves favors by just continuing to keep with the process because unlike some teams, this is a process that clearly has shown that they're comfortable together, they want to be there, and like you guys said, like they're really close, not only as a group, but I think they're really
Hmm.
close to potentially breaking through one of these years and maybe getting to a cup final or winning a Stanley Cup. Whether it's next year, the next couple of years, or this year even, who knows? So,
Yeah.
yeah, all around, I just think it's smart business on both ends. I think Justin, you said that exact thing, and it's it's a good deal that I can't really say anything negative about.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the other thing is about Winnipeg right now. they're all in the sense of this is their window. They realize like this is a 3 to 4 year window where they're gonna have a chance to go at it with the contracts that they have of Scheifele and Hellebuck being under $8 million per season each. And then you have Kyle Connor, who obviously now is making the most of anyone on the team going into the next season. And then you have Adam Lowry. The only thing is, it's always going to be the question in Winnipeg is whether or not they're going to attract players at the trade deadline in terms of getting
Yeah,
players to waive no move clauses. They weren't able to last season, and then attracting free agents. They made nice moves. Like they always make nice depth pieces, like
that's
additions in the
exactly it. Yeah.
offseason. But they don't get the big guy. And that's something that's always going to be a question mark with Winnipeg. But it's clear that they're going all in terms of pushing their chips into the middle of the table for the next 3 to 4 years with this core group of guys. And I don't hate this. This is a really good decision, in my opinion, for the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, and Morrissey, I think too. Like
Yeah.
he's got a couple of years left at a pretty reasonable number. I think it's like 6.5. I want to say maybe even less. So like he's going to be up for a bigger deal once we get to I think it's 27, 28, whatever year it is that he's a free agent. And if they
Yeah.
don't get him extended, then yeah, like he'll be commanding a pretty penny too. So it's just good that they're just kind of lining these deals up, and as long as they can continue to knock them down and make smart moves around the edges, which we know Shovel Dayoff will do,
Yeah.
they're in position to continue to contend for the next few years for sure.
Yeah. 100%. And let's move on to the next extension that was over the weekend, and this is an even bigger one for the Los Angeles
Mm-hmm.
Kings. They get a massive extension done in Adrian Kempe at 8 years, $10.625 million per season, $85 million in total. First off, this number is a little bit low in my opinion, or what I was expecting. It sounded like Kempe and the Kings were way off in negotiations for the last 2 months at least, or at least from the actually going back to the summer when he could actually sign this extension. Um, are you guys shocked that this is the number that it was eventually settled on? And what was your overall thoughts on this deal? Brandon, I'll go back to you first.
I mean, I would say that my surprise is more so just the fact that if it is considered a lower number, if they're looking at it as like we settled a little bit, then I am surprised that he wouldn't try to go to free agency because he might be one of the only player in
Yeah.
his kind of tier that would
Yeah.
get there and may have, been able to snag a few extra million from another team or go to a
Hmm.
different situation. So that's kind of where it is. But I don't honestly don't think the number is that bad. I mean, I think Kempe's a really good player, very skilled. But I mean, they haven't really won anything yet. They can't get by the Oilers. He's I think going to be the next guy in terms of a leader. When you have guys like Doughty and Kopitar, obviously is going to be stepping away
Yeah.
at some point. Obviously Doughty we don't know yet, but Kopitar next year, who's going to be the leader in that room, and I think Kempe is one of those guys that can be that. But I don't know that he is. To me, I'm not sure that I would have paid him like Rantanen or Marner money at 12 plus or something along those lines. I think
Mm,
for
I can.
me, he fits a little bit below that, but I think he's still a fantastic player, and it's just kind of yet to be seen. I think what his true peak will be with the Kings. So I think it's again another kind of really good deal. I think the Kings did really well in this deal as well, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll just have to see again how things continue to build with that team because I think as good as they are, they're in a weird position. I think as they're kind of moving on from some of these
Yeah.
legendary players, and it's still kind of yet to be determined exactly like I said how they're going to move on, not only just in the leadership roles, but like who steps in and takes that ice time and makes those plays that these guys have been doing for so long. So I like the deal for both sides. I think Kempe's the value's there, and I think he does really well with this deal. Unless he turns into a top five scorer, then I think maybe he's underpaid, of course. But we'll see what happens as we
Yeah.
go.
I was just more expecting like in the another $1 million range, like 11.5 was I thought was going to be the number considering they were so far off and comparable to other deals. I just yeah, what he does on the ice, he's obviously their workhorse right now and he's their main guy. He's the one that basically runs the offense, it feels like. If he's not going, they're not going to get a lot of opportunities that night. And like you said, Brandon, you brought up a really good point. Panarin is basically the headliner of this free agency
Yep.
class now, and he's 35 years old. Like, Kempe would have been in the prime of his career, 29, turning 30 next year, I believe. And he would have had an opportunity to cash in unlike any other free agent, because the rest of these guys, unless you're thinking about Patrick Laine, who is not going to get anywhere near what Kempe was going to get. Kempe was the only sought after free agent in terms of superstar potential free agent, because, Panarin's going to sign. He's gonna sign for a high AAV in terms of like $9 million probably, or somewhere in that range, but it's only gonna be for 2 to 3 years, and you're gonna see a decline in his play. But Kempe is the real person who everyone was looking at that could potentially go to free agency this season, and he ended up signing. Mando, I do have a question for you on
Sure.
Kempe's extension, but it's more so, are you shocked by all these extensions that happened this in the last couple of months for these 2026 free agents, in terms of they're not opting to go to free agency, they're opting to sign these massive extensions with their teams and stay put? Are you shocked by that?
From a player perspective, if you put it that way, a little bit. From a team perspective, you want to lock these guys up as soon as possible, especially with the cap increase. Great, you have a little bit more opportunity, but then players look at that and say, well, that's my opportunity to sort of cash in, and that we're going to take advantage. So in a way, I am, but I don't really have a reason as to why I'm shocked, but I think it's just the obvious in that you'll probably get a little bit more opportunity as a player to get paid if you hold out a little bit longer. Your
Mhm.
opportunity only maybe comes about twice in your career if you're Adrian Kempe or anybody better. So, but that being said, I think teams are kind of changing maybe the strategy that they're posing to players to say, like, you're the core guy. We need you here. And in order for our team to get better, we need to have a solid group in order to attract other guys coming in, because you can't attract a great free agent when you have 4 or 5 guys that are UFAs, or you don't really have a core of a team and an opportunity for success. So it is a little bit surprising in general. In this particular case, I could see why the Kings got it done now, because you're losing Kopitar. Doughty has
Mhm.
one more year on his contract at $11 million. They're going to have a lot of money to attract free agents. I was taking a look at 26, 27. First of all, the 2027 class is bad. There's nothing there. It's a
No,
lot
no,
of
no.
older
There's
players.
there's some players there. You're
I
missing
don't
two
know,
names.
dude.
You're missing two names.
Throw them at me.
Yes, likely they're going to be locked up. There's actually three names here, because there's actually a lot of names.
Well, that's the thing is,
You
though,
got
I'm looking at it from Quinn Hughes.
Quinn
Yeah, go
Hughes
ahead. Go
and
ahead. I'll
Cale
let you
Makar
finish.
are
Cale
there.
Makar's, I'm pretty sure
No, he's
Cale
this year.
Makar,
Or sorry,
I
he's
don't know, is this
2027.
year.
He's
I don't
2027.
know, dude.
He's
I'll have to
2027.
double check that.
Whatever you're looking at, if you're looking at Spot Track, it is
It's
wrong,
wrong,
and
isn't it?
he's
Yeah.
2027. Nikita Kucherov is
Unbelievable.
2027. DeBrincat, who's going to be 31 at that point, he's going to be there. Nico Hischier is going to be there. There's some big names here that are attractive. But I I really do think that the 2026 class, without any of those guys signed, was going to be bigger than that
It
class as
it
well.
100% would have, and I think when I look at it this way, it's just the top of the class is a lot of older guys, and when I look at a Hughes and I look at a Heischer and some of the names you mentioned, like, I just don't see them hitting the open market, especially the way that this season is going. So I do
Mhm.
see LA being able to say, we got our main guy with Kopitar leaving. That opens up another $7 million next year. That obviously offsets a little bit of the contract that they bring in Kempe. It's about $3.5 million the way you look at it,
Yep.
that they have left to pay, but $7 million that you can kind of say goes towards Adrian Kempe moving forward. Yeah, I think it's a great bit of business for the Kings. They are in this weird spot though, Brandon, where like they're gonna need to sort of add a couple of pieces. They just can't seem to push
No
past
doubt.
that first round, right? I know you're playing Edmonton every year and they're struggling, but they seem to struggle at the beginning of every season. A crash course is probably inevitable once again. Regardless, I do think it is a little strange, Justin, that these UFAs are signing. If I just have to play devil's advocate, my idea is you're building a core, and that's attractive to free agents that teams are looking to sign.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that it's very interesting. I think I think it's very interesting. Also, this is last year of the CBA with an 8-year extension in play or
Yeah.
8-year deal in play, and a lot of these guys are opting to do that. It makes me think of whether or not they should be taking the 8-year extension out. I really don't see a difference between leaving it at 8 years compared to narrowing it down to 7 years. It just like it's in my opinion, it should be 8 and 7 in terms of you can sign 8 years with your extension with your team that you're already on, or you can sign a 7-year deal as a free agent. Those are good numbers. It feels like is a little bit short to me. It feels like we're going into the NBA kind of model, and that kind of doesn't really sit well with me. But moving on to the ice and actual play, the New York Islanders, guys, the New York Islanders, they're 11-7-2. They are in a wild card spot right now. The last month has been great for them. They are playing great hockey. Obviously, the Alexander Romanov's injury the other night, disappointing, devastating to see. But despite that, they are playing excellent hockey. And I would point to Patrick Waugh being the main reason that they are literally a different team from not only just him, it's also Lou Lamoriello being gone. I feel like that has really opened up the doors for them to actually be who they are and take advantage of their offensive game. What do you guys see when you watch the Islanders? And let me know, like, do you think this is just a fluke and this is just a hot streak, or is this sustainable and they could actually push for a playoff spot this season?
I can jump in quick. I don't watch the New York Islanders. I'm gonna be quite honest with you. I just don't.
That was my
So
first
I
thought. I was like,
yeah,
I
it's like
don't.
I don't have much to say other than I
Really?
do think
With Schaefer as well?
I mean, I can't watch every game. I'm not watching New York. It's cool to see Schaefer dominate, and not dominate's the wrong word. It's good to see him have such a strong start to the season, right? 18 years old, he's doing things that 18-year-olds in general aren't doing, let alone defensemen. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about Schaefer in the next topic, but 15 points in 20 games to lead all rookies is pretty impressive, especially on the back end. I do think that from an Islanders perspective, Waugh is obviously a big factor, but I think they go as far as Ilya Sorokin takes them. He's had a really rocky start to the year, but in the past 5, 6 games, he's had some pretty strong starts. For playing Colorado recently, not so much, but he's kind of kept them afloat a little bit more than I think that this team has. They have some pretty good pieces. I remember last year them being a really old team. I don't think much has changed there. Obviously, Schaefer brings them down. They drafted a couple of nice pieces. I think in the next couple of years, they can kind of build this thing a little
Yeah.
bit more. Is it Aitchison who's on their team now? They
Yeah,
picked him up last year.
the 16th overall or 17th overall pick, and then Victor Eklund, William's
Victor
brother,
Eklund. Callum
um,
Ritchie that they
Callum
acquired from
Ritchie.
Colorado. Weird situation when he almost played his first game
I,
this year and
I
he
will
missed it.
I will also say Emil Heineman, who was a part of the Noah Dobson trade, who is
Yeah.
just he's broken out for them. He's looked really good. Um, he, Heineman was thought as an afterthought, I would say, in that deal, and he's actually turned into a nice player for the Islanders. So there's that, Mark Barzell, and then of course the guy that's probably pushing for a Team Canada spot the most on this roster, other than Matthew Schaefer, has to be Bo Horvat. So let's just
Mhm.
quickly touch on him. Brandon, when you're seeing what he's doing out there right now, I know you're not really. I guess you just said you're not watching him in particular, but like you're seeing what he's doing. Are you shocked by the season that he's had to start the season so far?
I mean, I would say I'm shocked by it. I think for Bo, everyone knows kind of who he is, and obviously he's had some fantastic offensive season in his career. But I would say it's not much of a stretch to say that he hasn't been the same guy in New York that we saw
Mhm.
in Vancouver at times at his peaks. But this year he's picked it up and he's looked great. A fresh kind of start for the whole organization, like you said, Justin. And yeah, Patrick Wall, I think, has a lot to do with it. Horvat himself has a ton to do with it as the team's, number one center and kind of leading the charge. But yeah, I think it's the injection of kind of the new blood. Heineman has been a great addition,
Yep.
very underrated in terms of him coming over and not really being spoken to or spoken of much in that deal. But I think for me, it's a guy that, we talked about Schaefer. You guys talked about um, uh, I'm losing it, but the young
Matt
kids,
Barzal?
Richie and Barzal,
Oh,
and you
okay.
talked about
Yeah.
like they have guys coming up. But like, I think for me, a guy who's joined the team and has kind of shown his veteran presence and that he's just a winner is Jonathan Drouin.
Yeah,
Mm.
true.
He's come over. I think he's got like 13 points in the first 19 games. Like he's doing what he typically does on teams, which is again kind of fly under the radar. And he's played on some good teams that have had opportunities to win it in the past. I think he just kind of continues
Colorado.
to roll on. Yeah, and he's spent some time obviously in Tampa Bay as well. And it's just like you kind of continue to bring guys in and you kind of figure out what works. Alex, you alluded to it last year. They were a slow, poor offensive team. They've really looked to inject some of that new blood and try to find guys who might work together. And I think the Horvat trade, even though that isn't as fresh, that's kind of part of it still. So even going back to when Lou was still around, they were trying to kind of on the fly get this team to a different place. And I think now they've actually taken some time to think about what their future should look like. And I really like a lot of the pieces they've got on. They've got an underrated defensive group too. Obviously, the Romanov injury is going to be tough. Hopefully, he's not out too long. But when you talk about like Schaefer and you had like Ryan Pollock, Adam Pellick, I think is great.
Yep.
Tony D'Angelo, whatever you think of him, he's an NHL guy. He can play.
Serviceable, yeah.
Yeah. And then you add in like I think Scott Mayfield also is pretty underrated. And I'm trying to think of the other. I think is it Adam Boquist? I like him too.
He'll factor in now that Romanov's gone. I'm pretty sure he'll fill the void there.
So like they're pretty deep defensively. They've always been a good defensive team. If Sorokin's playing well, they're going to be good. So yeah, I think like if they're able to keep up this kind of offensive production, I expect them to be better than they've been in the few years past, and they could easily challenge for a wild card spot. So I would say they're kind of right where they should be, I think, at this point in the season. But you never know how things go with some of the other teams and what the rest of the division looks like. So yeah, they're in a good spot, I'd say.
So we got to just talk about this guy. It's the main attraction to Long Island right now. It is Matthew Schaefer. The 18-year-old is taking the league by storm. He is on an absolute tear to start the season. I think people thought he might be okay in the NHL coming in and he wasn't going to look out of sorts, if you will, as a rookie. But I don't think anyone had this as what he would look like to start. And it has been so good that Elliot Friedman wrote in 32 Thoughts that came out on early Thursday morning indeed, that he has been put into the Olympic drug testing protocol. So now he is now eligible to join Team Canada at the Olympics. This is massive news because that means that Team Canada is seriously considering taking the 18-year-old Schaefer as one of the top 8 defensemen in Canada. Do you think that he's one of the top 8 defensemen in Canada, Alex, right now?
No, he's not making Team Canada.
What?
No, there's no way he's making Team Canada. I think it's a fun story, and I think it's exciting to talk about. And I have nothing against Matthew Schaefer. I might just be salty that the Sharks weren't able to get the first pick to get him last year. He's an incredible player. He's going to be the captain of that team in, let's say, 3 years, just the way he does interviews. He's 18 years old. Who is he taking out of that lineup on the Canadian team that basically already has 8 guys that are going to fill the void? And Brandon Montour's having a great year. They're not taking Travis Sanheim out. They would have to have 3 guys go down for Matthew Schaefer to make it. He's 18 years old. There's conversations about Macklin Celebrini and Connor Bedard maybe making the team. They're both top 5 in points at 21 years old. And the conversation is still will they make the team? It's in any other country, they're making the team. But unfortunately, this is the team that's in front of him. If Matthew Schaefer was a goalie, maybe we're having this conversation.
No, Matthew Schaefer's a goalie right now, and he's doing this. He's the starter. He's the starter.
I'll give you that. But as a defenseman, I think the biggest conversation that seems to be in the midst with Team Canada is experience. We saw in the Four Nations, they really valued experience. And that's why I think even Celebrini and Bedard, who have been this lovely conversation. It's a great problem to have for Team Canada. The only reason they might not make it is because they haven't been in these experiences where they've played the top players only for 6 games on end. And Schaefer, unfortunately, he played 17 games in the O last year, and he's only played 20 games in the NHL. I don't see how you bring him to the Olympics with that small of a sample size.
Man, oh man, you're telling me you would rather have Parayko, who doesn't look that great to start the season, over him right now?
So I think
Like, I'm
I
just thinking
think
there's a couple
no, no,
names
no.
here,
I
and
I
that's
totally think it's fair. I think
and Theodore.
what's the point of a defenseman? It's to defend. And I'm not saying he's a bad defender, but
He's been good.
you have 12 guys on the front end that can score goals. We don't need Matthew Schaefer to play power play
I'm not saying he's
on, on
that's
the Team
Makar.
Canada.
That's Makar, right? Like
That's the thing. And then you have even like a Brandon Montour can anchor back there, I think, if you needed to bring him. So I just don't see him taking a spot from a guy who's already done it this year, unless like 2 or 3 guys are injured.
I just don't think that they're taking Travis Sanheim. I can't see that.
Fair.
So that's kind of where I'm at with Travis Sanheim, and I think that he replaces that spot. If this is a serious it's like Sanheim's in the picture for sure, but Montour's also there. You have Uyghur that's in that picture, that conversation. You have Theodore, obviously, in the bubble of these defensemen, and you have Schaefer. Like, these are the guys that are, and honestly, Noah Dobson's probably in that conversation too, based on
I
his
would agree.
5-on-5 play with this season.
Yeah.
It's been pretty good. The only defenseman that's kind of played himself out of the team is Evan Bouchard. There's no way in hell he's done. There's no chance he's on this team. Like, he had another mishap last night Wednesday night, as we record this podcast on Thursday, against the Washington Capitals, against Ryan Leonard, and another teenager that just absolutely bullied him for a goal. But yeah, like, Brandon, to bring it back to Matthew Schaefer, when you're do you think he's one of the best 8 defensemen in Canada right now? Would you take him? I don't think, and also I think you brought up the point that you made, Alex, that is just we can't hold this against them, is the age. We can't hold age against them. If he's one of the 8 best defensemen in Canada, you take him no matter what the age is, I think, in my personal opinion.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of had this conversation last week, Justin, me, you, and Christian, and I have to agree with Alex. I really don't think that he is one of the best 8. I don't even think I'd say he's one of the best 10 defensemen available to Canada. You start to look through, I'm not saying that he's not great, and I'm not saying in certain situations I might want him more than another guy who might be right on the bubble too. But if you talk about experience, trust, and what the role is, I think those 3 things, I think just unfortunately Schaefer's not there yet. I think the next cycle, he might be able to challenge for a role where his skill set and his ability might actually factor in much more. And he'll have the experience of, 3-4 years in the NHL by then. He'll have played maybe a world championship. He'll have, there's just more to it. And I'm not saying like that there's no way a rookie should play, or that there's just, you're going to have a guy probably in the third pair who is going to be entrusted in certain situations only. He's not going to play a ton of minutes. He's going to need to be ready to go, and he's going to need to be trusted in key defensive zone situations. And not to say that Schaefer can't be any of that. I'm sure he's got great, underlying numbers in terms of, in terms of his defensive abilities. But I think it's just, you don't know what you don't know yet, and I think he's just not quite. Just doesn't have the experience yet. And I think one day he's going to get there, but I think you started naming guys that weren't there last year at the Four Nations. You talk about a Uyghur. You mentioned another name, and I was like, I would take him too, probably. But I think you start going down the guys that have been invited. Thomas Harley is probably going to be there again.
So this is my question. This was going to be my question about this. If Thomas Harley doesn't become a replacement last year for Four Nations, he's not on that team, and then it's a conversation of this year, does he deserve to be on the team? It's the same thing with Matthew Schaefer. Like, that kind of he's not on the team, but if a player got injured, he might be the guy that's getting called. Like, you know what I mean?
The thing about the Schaefer thing this year is, I do think that Alex alluded to it. I do think he was put on that group of 90 or whatever for injury purposes, because I think there is a pathway to where he maybe does get it on the team or does play, because right now we're looking at Drew Doughty with maybe a lengthy injury. We don't know what the situation is. I said to you guys last week, I think if he's able to go, I think they're taking him.
I don't think he's.
But based on what though? Like what?
He's not. He's not top 10. He's not even top 10 right now in terms of a Canadian defenseman.
But that's not the question.
Schaefer is
Is
better
he going
than
to
Drew
play?
Doughty right now. Schaefer is way better than Drew Doughty right now.
Well, Drew
so
Doughty's
I
not
have
playing right now. But yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Sure,
my
but
question
so far this season, he's better than Drew Doughty. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I see where you're coming from, Justin, with like the right now conversation. Well, my question last year was, were you satisfied with the players that Canada took?
No.
Right.
No.
So I think the reason is we look at the top players from Canada and we say Seth Jarvis is in the top 15 forward, top 13 forward. Travis Konechny, not a top 12, top 13 forward.
Seth Jarvis, I don't know.
We'll see. And that, we don't need to debate the whole team, obviously. I'm not trying to like get every player like, fired from Team Canada.
I would agree with Travis Konechny and Anthony Cirelli.
Even
guys.
like this year, you're saying Sam Bennett, but like I think there's a reason that they're picking these players is they're to fill roles, and it's not that Matthew Schaefer isn't a top 8 defenseman. It's that what role is he filling? Because if you're bringing him as an 8th defenseman, the one benefit is he's going to learn from the experience of the Olympics, which I can get on board with. But at the same time, I'd rather trust a Drew Doughty back there who's played in like how many Olympics already, and has won 2 cups and like can talk to the guys in the room and be like, yo, like this is what it's necessary to do to win. So that's kind of my take on that.
I get it. It's just like the Thomas Harley thing he was only in his second season, like actual second season last year when he was taken.
Montour, was he not injured last year? Is that why he didn't get picked?
I believe,
because I think
he just wasn't good last year. Like he was not. He just wasn't.
Maybe,
Brandon Montour.
The Uyghur one was surprising. I think.
Yes,
I expect
the
him
one
to be
that
there.
was an absolute snub last year, in my opinion, was Mackenzie Uyghur, and it was shocking that they invited Thomas Harley as the replacement over Mackenzie Uyghur, and that must have been because Uyghur was on vacation. I'm hoping because Uyghur should have been the one to fill that spot. Montour, I'm looking it up right now. Last year he played 81 games. It was just a rough season. It was honestly better than his season with the Florida Panthers, but just it didn't feel like a good
first season on a new team.
Montour.
He was being relied on in a different role, like Alex has kind of alluded to. Again, like this is no one's saying that Schaefer is not in that class or is not a great defenseman. I just think that when you're building a team, it's not an all-star game where everybody's on even field and you just throw them out there and they'll play so good because they're great. It's just you who are you going to put out there, and someone's in the penalty box, and you don't have your guys injured on the bench, and now Schaefer's out there as a rookie in his own zone, and you just there's situations where it's
I guess
you would trust him, but maybe not to the same level that where you've seen and you have the test of some of these guys. Just looking at the roster of guys, I think there's only a few that were invited to the 90-person camp at least, and there's not many that I would say I would trust Matthew Schaefer over, but I think there's no doubt in my mind some of these guys he's going to be better than, but I just don't know yet if it's the right time
he's a franchise player.
These guys are trying to win gold medal with they have no recipe for error, or no room for error. They have to win, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure that they pick the guys that they know for a fact can go out and do it. And I just don't think Schaefer's in that class yet. But I think having him available if you need him is great. That's what
we'll take 1 week off from the Canada debate of whether or not Macklin Celebrini and Connor Bedard should be on the roster.
I will say that I'm changing my stance ever so slightly from last week. Alex, I had
Bedard's gonna be on the team.
I had the same level of thought with Schaefer as I did with Bedard and Celebrini. I thought if the role is there and you think that he fits in a spot that he should play or they should play, I'm like all for it. But I wasn't sure where the pecking order lies and whether or not they yet are kind of there.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm starting to come around on both guys because they just won't stop. Like they're playing unbelievable. Like, and they're showing that they're not just like kids anymore. They're top level talents. They can handle top defense groups. They can do things that other players just can't. And maybe it's becoming to a point where you need to have 1 or 2 guys that are just absolute game breakers if they get the chance.
We can't talk about this forever, but it's coming to a point basically where it's what role can they fit into and can you see them in that role, and it's more so now it's becoming it doesn't matter the role, you have to fit these guys onto the roster. They're pushing the envelope that much with their play on the ice so far in the NHL season, and that's where we're at with those two right now. We'll come back to them next week, as they probably will score another hat trick each of them again on the same night. It's not going to matter. It's ridiculous what those two are doing right now. You talk about two guys that were motivated to come in and try to make an Olympic team, and they've done so. But moving on to the last NHL topic, and we gotta be quick on this one because we're already at 45 minutes, but it's been a really good conversation. The Leafs and the Oilers, which one is in more trouble right now? The Leafs are 9-2. They're 20 points, but they are only 2 points out of a wild card. The Edmonton Oilers, as of today, are kind of in the similar situation, I want to say. They are currently 9-4 with 22 points. They sit 4 or 5 points out of the division lead. It's not like it's a big gap in either situation. So, guys, who do you think is in more trouble?
I mean, I'll be quick, Alex. I honestly don't
Sure.
think that either team is really in that much trouble. But if I had to pick one, I would say Edmonton, because they still do not have a goaltender. After all of this time, I still don't trust Stuart Skinner
Mm-hmm.
to, not that I don't trust him to get back and they'll make the playoffs or to be good at some point, but I just don't see, I don't see the kind of comeback ability from him to consistently find it and give them a chance to win a Stanley Cup. So that's where I'll say that, because I think the Leafs, as much problems as they have, they're not healthy. Their goaltending has not been great. They haven't had both their two goalies yet this season, really. So I want to see what happens there, and I'll reserve a little bit more judgment for them based on what happens when they do get guys back. But for the Oilers, it's just like, yeah, like if Skinner is gone and doesn't have that ability to come back and figure it out, then like they're in real deep trouble, because they don't have any other option at this point. Maybe they do eventually
Mm-hmm.
try to make a trade and get another guy, but I just really don't trust the situation that they have back there. So I would have to say Edmonton, but they'll probably figure it out. So I'm not exactly like freaking out over it. I just think that's the one thing that I look at and then say, hey, I could see that causing them to really be a
Mm-hmm.
problem still through the rest of the season. So
Yeah, I'm gonna zag on that. I'm gonna say the Leafs are in a worse spot. I guess the question really should be clarified as to what is the specific factor of like the problem. Is it making the playoffs? Because if it's making the playoffs,
fair.
I would have to say Edmonton. I will agree with you, and that's just because I do think the East is just a gong show. Like, how many points are separating each team? Like 5 from the
Yeah, it's
top to the bottom.
ridiculous.
It's technically 7, but if we ignore like Buffalo, who again is having a horrendous season, like it's 5 points from first in. Okay, ignore 5 points. But the point being, specifically with the Leafs, if you're looking at the Detroit Red Wings, who lead the Atlantic, and the Leafs who are in 7th, it's a 5-point difference. And the Leafs are missing like their entire team. They're basically icing an AHL roster. But my
It's
concern is sorry. Go ahead, Justin.
it's 8 points from first place Carolina to 14th
Yeah.
place Toronto.
So if you look at it from that perspective, it's obviously a little bit more of a gap to bear, and that's very valid. But I think I look at the Atlantic and just being able to sneak into a top 3 spot. I just don't see a problem with the Leafs being able to slide in even in a wild card spot. They do have the guys that I think, when healthy, are able to at least grind out wins. But I would say the Leafs are in a tougher spot if we're talking about contention for a Stanley Cup. And I just don't know if the roster they have assembled right now is a Stanley Cup contender. Do they have the defense core that seems to have completely fallen apart this year? Edmonton does lack that goalie. And if they stick with Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, there's a 0% chance they win this year. I'll call it right now, even though they did make it with that tandem in the past 2 years. McDavid and Draisaitl are unbelievable. They're literally probably the top 2 players this is just in the past 5 years. McDavid, obviously, Draisaitl, you can argue.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 years in a row going to the finals, if this is to be the year that they make it again, that's tiresome. And you can't rely on your top 2 guys. As much as conditioning is unbelievable, it spreads to the rest of the roster. And it spreads to being able to make a single stop. And we saw it last night. You mentioned it with Washington. It's not specifically his fault last night, is Skinner, but if it's contention for a Stanley Cup, I do still worry more about the Leafs because I don't think they have the roster. But if it's just making the playoffs, I'm a little bit more worried that Edmonton will get beat out by another team that's having a good season. Seattle, Utah, Chicago, obviously in a wild card spot. Now that's kind of my thought on it.
Um, the only thing I was gonna say is Edmonton. The underlying numbers suggest that compared to other years where they started out slow, this is actually a worse year in terms of their underlying numbers of their team and what they're being able to do on the ice right now. So that would lead me to think that Edmonton is kind of, you can say that they can work themselves out of it because they have 97 and 29. I just don't think that's the simple answer, and they have more problems than what they're.
Just you could probably tell. Did the Oilers make any? Did they even make any defensive additions in the offseason?
No, so they basically ran it back with who they had.
Yeah, I
And
think that was a bit
yeah,
of a
like
mistake. Yeah,
they ran it back. They had no one to move basically, because your top five was set in stone with Bouchard, Nurse, Ekholm, Wallman, and Kulak, and then Ty Emberson is the sixth defenseman right now, which sure.
yeah.
They
I
did
think
have
they.
Troy Stetcher last year, but they decided to move on from him, and that's really the only defensive change that they had going into this season.
Yeah, I think if they were gonna say internally, okay, we're sticking with Skinner, I think they should have probably made a bit of more of a concerted effort to try to at least upgrade or deepen their defensive group. Because yeah, I think
Mhm.
you talk about it. I think Brett Kulak is a serviceable guy. He kind of is a similar to Troy Stetcher that they had last year. Obviously now is playing games with the Leafs because of their injuries, like we're talking about.
Mhm.
But I think they could have tried to upgrade that third pair a little bit, give themselves a little bit more chance to keep the puck out of serious danger zones because
6.
if they know.
They needed a better 6
Yeah.
defenseman because
Yeah.
Kulak I like. I like
Yeah. No, I agree. And
I like
whether
Kulak.
you try to get a guy to play with him or a guy to try to upgrade on him and then he falls to kind of that 6, 7 spot, like
Mhm.
I think, yeah, like that was probably the recipe for them going into the offseason. But instead they seem to always just like trim around the forward group and the bottom
Yeah.
six or try to find
Yep.
another cheap guy to play with the top six group. So I think
Yeah.
yeah, like they maybe misread the tea leaves a little bit, knowing that they'll be able to score no problem with anybody, but they just have the biggest problem in some of the biggest moments to keep the puck
Mhm.
out of their own net or out of their own
Mhm.
zone. So that's kind of where I see it.
All right, switching up from the NHL to the NBA, the hottest team, arguably, actually, I can't even say that with a straight face because the Oklahoma City Thunder still exists in the NBA, but the Toronto Raptors are 9-1 in their last 10 games. They now are 10-5 on the season, their best start since the 2019-2020 season. Man, this is exciting and a breath of fresh air to see. And it's not just like one guy is doing it for the Toronto Raptors, it's a collective effort. It seems like their whole starting five, and then in addition, you have Grady Dick off the bench, Jamal Shed. Like, there's a couple guys, but they're kind of set on stone playing 30 plus minutes with their whole starting five. That would be Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Pertl. They're all set on playing 32 plus minutes a night, it feels like. So guys, when you look at this roster right now, are you guys shocked by what they are doing? Brandon, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I'm not shocked looking at the roster because I think it's got a ton of great talent on it, but I was more shocked that they've been able to go on this run after starting kind of so slow. I think they were 1-4 to
They
start
were
the
one and
season.
five to start the
That's
season.
so like I think at that point I
Or
was it was
sorry,
one
one and
or
four,
yeah,
because they're
no
one or
worries.
9-1. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was one or the other. But I just looked at it as like, okay, this is a group that's still figuring out how to play together. Adding a guy like Brandon Ingram cannot be easy, even if you have a full offseason to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So to get them on the floor and then to see them kind of click so fast, it's been great. I mean, I think the Brandon Ingram piece is key. He's kind of allowed everyone else to kind of fall into their positions. Scotty Barnes especially doesn't have to look to be the lead scorer every game. He can play it within his style, and he's obviously a great facilitator and a great rebounder, and he can score a little bit himself. So we're starting to see him turn into the player I think that he's going to be for the rest of his career, obviously. And Brandon
Mm-hmm.
Ingram's just allowed again this team to play more free, I think, offensively, knowing that they have a guy like him who can score at any time. But again, they've just also been able to fall into their roles defensively, where I think they know, to your point, Justin, about how many minutes these guys are playing. Um, they're able to go out there as a unit and really know what their assignments are, and try to not only score as much as the other team, which is what the NBA is really about these days, but they look to get stops, and I think they're uniquely able to do so with the group of guys, and they've got some length and some speed as well. So I think the group is great. Shout out to I guess Bobby Webster, and obviously before Masai. Um, but these guys have done a good job in kind of continuing the process of trying to just rebuild this team on the fly, and it's
Mhm.
one move that they made last year with the Ingram deal, and having
Mhm.
the kind of reluctance to move off of a quickly or RJ Barrett. It's just nice to see that those moves are kind of working out at this point. So I'm excited to see what the ceiling of this team really is, and keep watching them enjoy having fun out there.
Yeah, when the trade for OG kind of first resurfaced or surfaced in the initial um, deadline there, we were thinking like, okay, that was a win for the Knicks, right? Like OG is a great piece. A lot of pundits around the NBA were saying like the Raptors didn't acquire enough, and RJ Barrett was such a hot start to the season, and IQ started off slow. I think he's starting to pick it up. If we get a little bit more from an Emmanuel quickly on the perimeter, I think then it kind of solidifies that starting five is like this is a team that can contend at least in a play-in to low playoff spot. I don't know how well versed and well like set up they are for an actual run this year, but I think the next topic that you put in here about the NBA is the East being pretty wide open. They beat a really solid Sixers team to start the year. They were really hot. They obviously moved down, and you see the Detroit Pistons in that top spot. But there's a couple of stats that I find really interesting. And courtesy to Josh Lewenberg for this first one. But a year ago, the Raptors throughout the season, they were 10-22 in games that were within 5 points or less in the final 5 minutes. So basically, really tight games at the end of the fourth quarter. But that was the second worst, what I guess is called clutch record in the NBA. But this season, they're already 4-2 in games of the same category. So basically, tight games, they have won four out of the 6 games that they've played.
Mhm.
And those are 2 straight clutch wins when you factor in the 76ers and then the game against the Hornets at home, which was an amazing finish. And you saw like the real Brandon Ingram truthfully come out like we haven't seen him all year, but that dunk and just the game at the end with Scotty Barnes getting involved. BI has been such a great treasure because you mentioned it so much, Brandon, but like he takes away the team's first defensive option, that teams that play against him. So Scotty's facing the second best defensive option. So
Mhm.
it opens up the floor a little bit more for him. And so far last year, the Raptors went 0-10 to start on the road last year. They're already 7-3 on the road. So I think that's massive. Like being able to win on the road is difficult in any league. They've scored 120 points on average versus 108 last year through the first 10 games. So like it's important to win those games on the road when you're not getting the crowd behind you. So I just think that the team, they're still pretty youthful. You mentioned Shed and Grady Dick off the bench. Like those are solid options. Jamal Shed's a dog. I think he's the favorite, my favorite player in the Raptors, just the way he plays. I'm
Yeah.
excited to watch this team for the first time in a long time. And I think that's already says a lot with how the Jays have played and how the Leafs kind of take over the city. Like it's a fun
Yeah.
team to watch so far.
Yeah, I would agree that they have been fun to watch so far. They were kind of dry the last 2 seasons. You kind of knew what it was in terms of they were trying to tank and get a high pick. It obviously didn't really work out in their favor as they got the 9th overall pick last year. Although Murray,
He looks good though.
yeah, he
Yeah,
has looked good.
CMB. Yeah, he looks nice.
CMB has looked pretty good. So um, I look at this Eastern Conference, like you said, like it's wide open, Alex, and that's kind of the most exciting part about this is due to a bunch of injuries, which is obviously devastating to see. Like the Indiana Pacers, that's a massive turnaround. Who would ever thought that was going to happen? Go from Game 7 of the NBA Finals to basically being the worst team in the NBA. And then Jason Tatum, obviously the Boston Celtics, his torn ACL. It just makes the East a lot more wide open for a lot of teams to compete in. And it's going to be interesting to see where this team actually goes for the rest of the season, because I do think that while they look good, they look fun, I don't think this is a championship team. The last question I have on this is, do you think it goes right directly to a championship? and I've been on this side for a long time. Do you think Scotty Barnes, or the side of no, sorry, do you think Scotty Barnes is the number one option on a championship winning basketball team? And I don't think he is. I just simply don't think he's a franchise player. I know a lot of people think that he is, but I just personally don't think that. It's just when you think about a championship guy, I think about a guy that can take over the game at any moment in time, and I just don't see that with Scotty Barnes. I don't see an instant killer that can just go and get you the game-winning bucket. I don't get that feel with him. Brandon, what about you? Do you feel that way?
I mean, I do kind of agree that in terms of like pure scoring, I'm not sure that like, game on the line, you put the ball in Scotty's hands and he's just going to do it himself. But I do think that he can be. And again, it all depends on what you view. Like some people will say that
Mhm.
Scotty is the best or will be the best player on this team, but Brandon Ingram is the best scorer, or does other things maybe better than Scotty. So depending on your view, like I think Scotty can be the 1A or a 1B on a championship team, but you need the right formula around him to do that. And maybe that some of that does include, the right kind of breaks. Like if this year, if they go on
Yeah.
a run because of injuries or because of other teams just not being at their best, that's not their fault. They're going to take that every time. And
Yeah.
yeah, he can be, if he's available, which he typically has been in his career so far. I think he can be, like I said, a 1A or 1B on a team that could win a championship. But in terms of this year, I don't really see it this year. I think there are still a few teams that, if they're healthy or are going to be at their best, in the playoffs, I think the Raptors still a bit young and inexperienced in the playoffs with the group that they have now. So maybe they, could win a round or maybe two if they get the right break. But I think we're seeing that just the development. And Alex, you said it, like most of their group is still pretty young. Like you talk
Yeah.
about Scotty and Quickly, Barrett and Ingram are not super old. Like they're still in their primes. And then you talk about Pirtle maybe is the one who's kind of had the longest career so far and is still probably, in his prime, but is, not necessarily the, peak center that maybe you'd expect on a
Mhm.
championship team. But their bench is great. They work really hard. They got young guys that offer different abilities and can play in different roles. So yeah, I'm excited to see where the team goes. But I don't necessarily know that I'm, looking at Scotty or the rest of the team as like a championship contender yet.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, all well said. I think the age factor is probably the biggest takeaway. I know the question was, is Scotty Barnes the number one option? I would have to agree with you guys. I don't see him as that right now. Now, he is only 24. RJ Barrett's only 25. I found that
Yeah.
out earlier this year, and I was like, I feels like he's played so
Yeah,
much longer,
it
right?
does.
Like he's still so young, and I think IQ, I think he might be 27. I don't have the information in front of me, but they're a younger
I'll
team.
check for you.
Yeah, take a quick peek while I vamp here. But basically, I don't see them competing. I don't see Scotty as the first option, but I think that's why you get a guy like Brandon Ingram. Now, is he the number one option on any team? I don't know. When you look at the Houston Rockets, I think a big question last year in the playoffs, even though they went in as the number 2 seed, is who is their guy? Like, is it Fred VanVleet? Is it Amon Thompson? Probably not. This year's Kevin Durant. He's very clearly that number one option. I don't know if you look at the Raptors, and yeah, right now BI is your number one, but is he the guy that's going to carry you to a championship? Can you rely on just him? Probably
Yeah.
not. Scotty Barnes, I think, is one of the top complementary pieces on a championship team if you look around the
That's
league.
that's a good
Right?
take. Like that's exactly what he is. He's a good second option on a championship winning team, in my opinion. And IQ is only 26 years old for
Okay.
the whole season.
Nice.
So yeah, he's still super young as well. Um, listen, we gotta move on because we've just been talking
Yeah.
way too much about everything. We love to chat, and that's okay. But we're gonna jump into the NFL because the NFL is I, the first 2 months are fun. They're like I will never ever complain about a football weekend and a football week in general. But the first 2 months, it's not like the real intense football. It's like we're gonna figure out what teams are what and whatever. But now it's like to the point where the football really matters and we're gonna really start to see some impactful games down the stretch. And starting off with this weekend, you have this Indianapolis Colts versus the Kansas City Chiefs. if the Chiefs don't win this game, are they going to miss the playoffs? Brandon, I will go to you first. They will be 5-6 if they lose this game, by the way.
I mean, isolating that game on its own, I'm not ready to say that if they lose like that instantly they'll miss the playoffs. But I think depending on what happens around them, it definitely will not help them. Because if they lose and some of the teams around them go out and pick up a win, they're just going to fall even farther back. I think I heard Danny, if you guys are familiar with Danny Parkins on FS1, he made a point that I think is very, very valued when it comes to the Chiefs, is that until you see that little X beside them in the standings that says they're truly mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, I don't think I can count them out until that point happens. So I think, no, I would say that even if they lose this weekend, I wouldn't count them out of the playoffs yet, but it will certainly be, I think, the biggest. I mean, I think it's the biggest game for them so far this season in terms of keeping their hopes alive to continue their dynasty and make the playoffs again and have a chance to. I don't think they're even mathematically eliminated from winning the division yet. Are they, Justin? Do you know that offhand?
No, they're not eliminated from winning the division yet.
And I don't expect them to win the division, but I'm sure internally they're looking at this game and saying, okay, guys, this is the one where we have to get back on track. And maybe they're looking at it as like, yeah, their best shot to kind of get back into the hunt, because they've had some tough games, obviously, of late. But yeah, until they're out of it, I'm not going to count them out yet.
They will basically have zero margin for error if they lose against Indy, because they have 6 games left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 against division opponents. I guess 3 if I'm not even counting the Raiders, because yes, they're a division opponent, but how much do they really? That's a W. You play the Titans, that's also a W. And you play Dallas, who I think I'm going to give it to the Chiefs. So right? Is that safe to say? The hardest
that could be a toss up. Dallas is
great. I will grant that. I will definitely grant that to you. Then you have your Houston Texans, LA Chargers, Denver Broncos. I'm not saying I trust any of those teams. I think Denver has obviously proven they've won this year. I don't know if I'm completely convinced of their offense. They have an incredible defense. I'm getting completely off track. I just think if the Chiefs lose, they're not 100% done, because yet, like you said, we need to see that X. But it's pretty much written. Like there's zero margin for error for the rest of the year. I don't see them as a playoff team, but yeah, like I'm going to say that now, and then they're going to end up winning. So like, who knows what happens with this team? They're never dead until they're officially dead.
Yes, I would agree with that. I have one more, or actually 2 more questions on the NFL before we go to Sarah Maat is actually going to join us for a quick, brief conversation on the PWHL. Nice. Starts tomorrow. First off, the first question is Shedeur Sanders. Is this make or break for this kid? I can't believe the report came out. He hasn't practiced with first team or hasn't taken first team reps all season long. That kind of seems hard to believe if that's true. That just doesn't seem right. Even as the backup, he should be getting at least like 10% of first team reps, getting at least a little bit of action, considering that you'd think that eventually at one point, Tom Brady, even in the prime of his career, probably was only taking 80% of the reps in practice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that just doesn't seem right. It doesn't to me. So anyway, they're playing the Raiders, as we mentioned, probably one of the worst teams in the NFL. Is this the weekend that it is all on Shedeur Sanders to prove whether or not he can be an NFL quarterback or not? Brandon, I will start with you.
No, I don't think it's make or break or the way that you put it in terms of I think it's his best chance. He has a great opportunity to showcase against the team that doesn't have a fantastic defense. He's definitely going to have opportunities to make plays, but I don't think that even if he goes out and loses and doesn't look great, I still think there's a pathway for Shedeur to eventually get another shot, whether it's with the Browns or not. But yeah, I mean the reps thing is interesting. I would agree to a degree. I think that they should have been allowing him some first team reps at some point, especially once they had moved off of Joe Flacco, because yeah, you're one injury away from him jumping in a game, which is exactly what happened. So why not try. But at the same time, they were looking at Dylan Gabriel as like, the horse blinders were on and he's our guy. He's our guy. So
Yeah.
there's an argument to be made that they wanted to give him every opportunity to be ready and try to go out there and win games. So yeah, like you said, it's a huge opportunity for the kid. And I expect him to play better than what we saw this weekend. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's still going to be some
Well,
growing pains. He's a rookie. He's going to have his first start, and he's getting his first chance at first team reps this week, right? So there's still going to be some rust there, and we still might have to wait if he gets other opportunities this year. If Gabriel can't come back right away, then maybe he continues to get better. But yeah, I don't think that this start is going to be too indicative of what his career looks like going forward.
mm-hmm. Alex, I'll
Yeah.
go to you.
Sure. I mean, I'll say this, like this matchup is a lot more interesting than it was 15, weeks ago. Like you look at this matchup on a schedule, pretty much knowing that well, first of all, at that point in the preseason, Cleveland had like 5 quarterbacks. What they're down to 3 now. Or I guess technically you're 2 that were on the roster before, if you don't count Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's more interesting than you anticipated to start. It's not that much more interesting because the teams are garbage. But what I normally would say is like he's getting a great chance, Shador. But that being said, he is up against one of the best defensive players in the league in Max Crosby, who is probably going to be very motivated to be one of the storylines of this game and take away the narrative of Shador being this
I do
this
agree.
savior, right?
I
So
do agree.
I will be interested in seeing what happens in this game. I also agree though with Brandon in that it's not his only opportunity. Now, whether that be because he has a decent game and maybe they still lose, or because of the name on the back, like people are going to want to get a look at him. And there's been this big narrative around him starting the year.
Dion's
But
son, man.
yeah, right. I just there's a reason he got drafted in general in the NFL, be it in the 5th round. It's the Cleveland Browns, so everyone likes to make fun of the way the organization manages it, but I still think it'll be fun to watch, and he'll probably get another chance, whether it's with this team this year, next season, or down the line in some capacity.
I would agree. Moving on to the last question in the NFL, the Chicago Bears are 7-3. Are they a good team, or are they just well coached and they're just getting lucky with a couple wins right now?
They're
Brandon,
good.
go ahead.
They're a
Yeah,
good
go ahead.
team. I mean, they're a good team. I think there is an element of luck, and they've had some games where they've had some breaks. But I think that for the most part, like I think they're in the group of like playoff hopefuls and contenders. Like they're going to be not necessarily championship contenders, but they're going to be around the mark. They're in a tough division, so they may
Mm-hmm.
not make the playoffs after all. But they've got a great record. So I think they're in a position where it's on them to really continue to grow
Mhm.
and build. And first time or first year head coach with Ben Johnson, so you expect they're going to only get better as the season goes on. And if they can stay healthy and they've got some good offensive talent, and their defense has been really good too, outside of a few different games where they've had to score a ton of points to win. But I really like the group that they've got. I think Caleb Williams is showing that he can absolutely be a successful starter in the NFL. And with a guy like Ben Johnson, who's going to put him in positions to win, I think they have a few things that they need to work on if they're going to, compete with some of the best teams. But yeah, I give them just as much of a shot as any other team right now in the NFC to at least make the playoffs, because yeah, they've done a lot of things that have surprised me in a good way.
Yeah, I would agree as well with that. Like, I just think that the Chicago Bears, I don't know if I trust Caleb Williams. That's the biggest thing.
Mm.
Whether or not like you actually think Caleb Williams has been good. I think he hasn't been good in a lot of these games this year. Like he's been serviceable and he's been decent, but I just don't think he's elevated the team anywhere past what you would hope from a first overall pick. Alex, what about you? What do you think about this Chicago Bears team?
Yeah, I have a hard time trusting the Bears being good. Like they've just been so mid to a poor team the past few years. They haven't really ever had a good quarterback. Caleb Williams is performing pretty admirably so far this year, but there hasn't been anything that he's done that's completely wowed me. You've seen a guy like Drake May, who has had just an unbelievable season, same draft class, who has proven that he's a
Mhm.
franchise quarterback, albeit in only 1 year. And I'm not saying Caleb hasn't. I just haven't seen anything that's like this guy clearly has
Flashy.
is taken this team under his wing. And I also just see, and you mentioned the difficult division. They're only 1-2 in the NFC North. So they're only
Yeah.
1-2 in their own division. And they still have to play the Green Bay Packers twice. They have to play the Eagles on Thanksgiving weekend, the 49ers, who are a decent squad, and then the Lions to end the year. So they've played a pretty decent schedule so far. They're a good team. Are they contenders? Like you said, Brandon, I don't think so. It is crazy to think they're 7-3, first in the division. They might not make the playoffs.
I
I
know,
don't
that's
have any
crazy to
reason.
say.
Like, look,
That's
I'm not going to
crazy to
say
say.
they have no. I have no reason to believe they won't make the playoffs, but I still think they need to play a couple of good teams to prove that they're actually in contenders with that top echelon.
The NFC is a gauntlet, and that's what we can leave this at, is the
Yeah.
NFC is a gauntlet. Yeah, so as we get ready here, we're gonna switch up to PWHL talk with Sarah Maat, who also writes at Sportsnet, who's also my girlfriend as well. So but just quickly on the PWHL before she joins up here quickly. It's the season starts tomorrow. We're already on season 3. It's hard to believe that when we were in school at Centennial, the first season was starting up, which is kind of crazy. I know, your brain, you have a smile on your face, but it's crazy to think about the fact that it's already on season 3 of the PWHL. What have you guys, before we talk to Sarah quickly, the growth so far in the PWHL and the expansions and all that so far? What are your guys' first thoughts, I guess, on the first 2 seasons and the growth that you've seen? Brandon, I'll go to you first.
No, I mean, I've been very impressed, and I'm happy for the league and its players in general, because it feels like, yeah, now the PWHL, maybe more so in Canada here or in certain markets where the league's actually active. But it feels like it's part of like the sports calendar now. Like you're not like, oh yeah, okay, oh I didn't realize it was still happening or it's back. That was kind of this, maybe for some people the second year people were like, oh okay, here we go. But now it's like, okay, people are looking for it, people are active, people want to see these teams play, and I'm excited to see what happens as we, get the league started. What's the schedule this weekend, Justin, for teams playing?
First off, tomorrow night, the opening night of the PWHL, it is the Toronto Scepters at the Minnesota Frost. The Minnesota Frost open up as back-to-back Walter Cup champions. And then later on in the evening is the Seattle Torrent versus the Vancouver Golden Eyes. You know, that was the matchup they were going to have to play because it's the 2 expansion teams playing their first ever PWHL games. But we have an actual expert to talk about that more with Sarah Maat, who joins us now. As I was saying, Sarah, you write for you were a producer on this show as well, which was kind of crazy that it's over a year ago that is the case now. But you now are at Sportsnet and you're writing, and you have an official PWHL stamp beside you, and you are an expert, which is very exciting. So first question, quickly on the PWHL season is, which is the biggest storyline that you're or most exciting storyline that you're excited to see actually develop throughout the course of this season?
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, it feels like so long ago when I was actually working on this podcast, and now here I am getting to talk about the PWHL, which is so exciting. There's so many good storylines, and I feel like the big one going around right now is obviously the expansion teams and how things will shake up there. But that's not the one I'm going to pick. I think I'm really excited to see the Montreal Victoire. Not a specific storyline necessarily, but this is a team that I've been favoriting to win like the last 2 seasons. They have the best player in the world. They have, in my opinion, the best goalie in the world, and they have a lot of other key place or pieces to fill in the other spots from there. And so, yeah, I think that this is the year that Marie-Philippe Poulin is like, okay, it's an Olympic year. I need to pop off and give the Montreal Victoire their first Walter Cup championship. So I'm excited to watch that team and really zone in on them this year for sure.
You actually just wrote a piece for sportsnet.ca, the 8 most intriguing players going into this season, one from each team. Which of those 8 players is the most intriguing to you going into this season?
That's a good question. There's so many. I think I'm really intrigued by Sarah Nurse, just because she's obviously in a whole new market. one thing that we know about her is that she really gets fired up by her fan base and by the fans that are there. Just supporting her. And so to be in a new market in Vancouver where she's the primary tenant in that market is so exciting to see that. And so I think, she's a key player this season. She'll help bring the Golden Eyes into their realm a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see. She had an off season last year with some injury problems, especially around like the rivalry series and things like that. But she should be in full health and ready to go this season. So she's definitely a key player. I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, if you guys want to jump in and ask a question, you can go right ahead. But I just have one more quickly on this year. Who do you think has the biggest expectations going into this season in terms of the team themselves? Like which team? Like obviously we talked about Montreal being first round exits the first 2 seasons, but are they the team that has the highest expectations on them, or is there another team out there that you think has even bigger expectations, aka I look at a team like the Vancouver Golden Knights who have a lot of players that a lot of people around the PWHL have said it's crazy how much talent they got through an expansion draft and just being able to pick people off the other 6 rosters and the team that they were able to assemble going into their inaugural season. So is that another team that would have high expectations going into the first season?
I mean, yes, there's lots of high expectations, especially like they're an expansion franchise. Like you said, they have all these key players. They have players like Hannah Miller, even who's like known for her scoring ability. So is expected to kind of make a splash over there on the West Coast at the beginning. But beyond that, I think what people are not talking about right now, but they will be in a few weeks, is the New York Sirens. This is a team that hasn't made the playoffs in both the first seasons, and now they have 2 consecutive first overall picks on their roster. Um, they should be able to actually, make the playoffs and have an impact this year. And so I think that there's a lot of pressure on that team, especially because of how they fared in the first 2 seasons and then how much like depth and skill and ability they have on their roster now. So I'm excited to see what Sarah Fillier can get up to with that team this year.
Yeah, I actually got one. I'm gonna go ahead and jump in here, Sarah, because I'm really intrigued. I know you said like it's probably the biggest storyline, but you didn't really want to talk about it right off the bat. You wanted to pick something different in the expansion, right? Like I just think it's interesting the way that the teams assembled both in Vancouver and Seattle their rosters. With Seattle, their first signing being Hillary Knight. In June, forward of the year, Billie Jean King MVP award finalist. And then you look at Vancouver bringing in Claire Thompson, who's a finalist last year for the Defender of the Year, 2025 Walter Cup champion with Minnesota. So like they really brought in people that are probably going to build a rivalry here. So how do you feel about the way that those 2 teams maybe assembled the rosters and just the way the PWHL like expanded? I think it's cool that they immediately brought 2 teams in that are just going to be rivalries, hopefully for years to come.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I've had a couple months to process this whole expansion kind of journey because
Sure.
at first I didn't really agree with how these teams were added into the fold. I didn't think that allowing them to poach players in the way that they did, especially like ahead of this expansion draft, was maybe the most thoughtful plan. But it's been cool to see how, like you're saying, this rivalry is already being born because these players were allowed to be taken to the new teams. And I think that because the league is so new, it's okay that this big shuffle happened as a result of expansion. But I do feel a little bit, maybe not sorry or pity, that's too much, but I feel for especially fans of like the Boston Fleet or the Ottawa Charge who got obliterated by this whole expansion process. Um, and now both of those teams are without their top like point getter and they're without like major veteran leadership because of the expansion process. And so even thinking about the Ottawa Charge and what they have going on with their arena dispute and all kinds of other things off the ice right now, um, like there's good and bad things from this expansion. There's those 2 teams that are really going to struggle potentially, and then there's these 2 new teams on the West Coast that are going to bring so many new eyeballs to the league, so much more excitement, and then potentially a different style of play as we see players mixed up. Like you said, like a 2-time Walter Cup winning championship or champion with one of the best like American players in the game is going to be crazy to see that matchup come together. So there's good and
Yeah.
bad for sure, but yeah, I'm still excited about the season. Totally.
Yeah.
My question, Sarah, and you kind of already alluded to it a little bit, was about Sarah Fillier. Um, New York, I think you're on it. I think they're going to be an interesting team to watch for sure. And I think part of that is because of her. I think she, in her rookie season last year, if I'm not mistaken, tied the league lead in points.
Yep.
Was unbelievable. And I think a lot of people will look to her to take another jump. And we've seen Marie-Philippe Poulin obviously been kind of the stalwart in terms of looked at, I think, as the best player in women's hockey. And I just wonder then, as she kind of gets a little bit older and as Sarah kind of grows up and becomes kind of more acclimated to the pro game and just continues to get better, do you see her kind of stepping in and becoming the next, kind of the next quasi best player in the league, or is there someone else? I know Hillary Knight's been fantastic as well. Maybe she has a great season, or maybe there's someone else that I'm not familiar with. That was kind of where I was going.
Yeah, I think you definitely have it there, Brandon. Like, Sarah Fillier already showed us in her first season what she's capable of. And I've been looking a lot into the New York team for this year, especially because what was interesting about last season is, like, Sarah is kind of naturally a center, but she was playing with Alex Carpenter, who's another one of the best in the game. And Alex also plays center positions, so Sarah was finding herself on the wing, and it worked well for the two of them. And like, they did have success, but then there were some injuries with Alex, and then the rest of the New York team couldn't really support the run that maybe those two wanted to go on. And so they had, like, we know, the difficulties that New York had last year. But this year, Alex Carpenter is gone. She's in Seattle now. And so there's now this opening at the top for Sarah to take on that natural center position that she knows and loves. And I think that we're only going to see even more production and leadership from her now that she's in this position that has been hers in every other team that she's played on. And so I think that even that simple change is going to show, like, okay, yeah, Marie-Philippe Poulin is the best in the world, but there's some incredible rookies or young talents coming up right behind her that are going to kind of give her a run for her money on the ice, which is just exciting to see for sure.
The last question before we let you go, Sarah, you have to give us your pick of who will win the Walter Cup this year. You don't have to be right, obviously, no pressure on being right.
Yeah, you
But
do.
you gotta give your pick on who you think right now, before any trades really happen this season, is most capable or is most geared up to win the Walter Cup this season.
Well, if I have to be right, like Alex said, then I better think about this one. Um, no, I think I'm going to pick the Montreal Victoire, and maybe that's just because I just so badly want Montreal to have a championship like this one. But I also think that they have enough of their pieces that they've been developing over the last 2 years kind of staying in that city. So the chemistry is there. They've been able to add a little bit at the draft and through other, like, signings and little trades throughout the summer. But they also have the best player in the world on their team. And they have all the reasons to win, of course. They have, just a great GM. She's just been added to the Hockey Hall of Fame. So there's lots of good stuff happening in Montreal. So I want to get on board with that team, and hopefully we'll see them win the final this year.
And like you said in your Sportsnet Badatie piece, it's an Olympic year, and Poulin always delivers and comes up big in Olympic years. She's Captain Clutch for a reason and is known for that reason in these big moments. So, yes, we hope to see Poulin have another great season and lead Canada to gold, but then also we'll see what she's able to do in the PWHL and hopefully grab a Walter Cup before her time expires in terms of her PWHL career. Because it's time is flying. Before you came on, we mentioned it's crazy to think that when we were starting Centennial College, the first ever puck drop was for the PWHL, and we're already into the third season. So it's kind of crazy that this much time has already gone by in the PWHL. But it's been great to see the game of women's hockey grow as much as it has, and we're at a great point with it so far. But thank you for joining us today, Sarah. I'm sure we can talk more in the future about the PWHL. But thank you for joining us so far today and
Thanks,
talking
Sarah.
about everything with the PWHL.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me.
Alrighty, that was Sarah, a live interview, which we hope you enjoyed.
Wow.
I don't know if you guys enjoyed that. Just bring her in, get her in the green room, and then bring her right into the actual set. No, but thanks for her to joining us to give us a little preview about the PWHL season.
Yeah.
and talking about what to expect going into the third overall season in the PWHL's history. But that just about does it, unless you guys have anything else pressing that you guys want to talk about. I think we've covered a lot this episode, and I think we've had a lot of great conversations, whether it be the NHL, because we talked about that for a while, and the Matthew Schaefer debate. That's a really good one. But yeah, I don't know. There's nothing else that I can think of to talk about right now.
No, there'll be more Team Canada talk eventually, but we'll probably save it. Brandon, what were you thinking there?
I was going to say the same thing. I think it was a great episode. I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about as we continue on this winter. There's going to be a lot of good debates.
Oh yeah. As it gets closer and closer, you can imagine the debate is only going to get more and more intense of who is actually going to end up on this roster. We didn't even mention guys like Tom Wilson, to say the least, of guys who could potentially be on this Canadian roster. But anyways, we'll leave that for another date. Thank you for listening. And if you aren't already subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, please do so now. If you've made it all the way through, we very much appreciate you listening and taking the time out of your day to do so. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. If you want to follow us along on there, you'll see some social media stuff posted on there as well. Thank you for listening to episode 41 of the Second Look Sports Podcast, and we'll see you next week.